Hi, I'm R.A. Harrington, and this is the podcast for my novel Perditions, Brink, the Prologue. If you'd like the full printed version of the book, you can purchase a copy on Amazon.com. You can also check out my website at raharrington.vox.com. Perditions, Brink is copyright 2009 by Robert A. Harrington, all rights reserved. Now, on with the book. Perditions, Brink, the Prologue. Hungry eyes shone dimly through the chest-high mesquite surrounding the outskirts of Chandler's Canyon. The eyes scanned the dirty white trailers dotting the small community clustered close together among patches of rocks, sand, cacti, mesquite, and gray oak. 3-foot-tall fences of steel mesh, rust, and wood bordered many of the properties, hardly more than territorial markings among the trailers and unkept dirt roads. Hulks of rusted cars, weathered sheds, and assorted scrap dotted the community, completing the haphazard pattern of settled humanity in the rough scrub environment. The yellow eyes blinked sharply as the owner crept slowly from the grass and headed for a remote trailer on the edge of the settlement. The small creature was smooth, black, and oily, sliding silently over the ground in an unusually wide gait for its two thin legs. Its oblong head set with narrow ear slits swiveled side to side constantly, its saucer-shaped yellow eyes scanning and searching the hot, humid night in an excited state of predatory alertness. The creature slid into the shadows of a rusted-out refrigerator near the back door of the trailer, becoming completely still as a seamless part of the hulking shadow. It paused briefly as a nearby dog barked over the faint sounds of country music floating into the brightly mooned night sky. Slowly, the creature moved around the refrigerator and reached up to a dimly lit sill, pulling itself up to gaze through the unwashed screen of the aluminum-framed vertical sliding window. Inside the trailer, a young couple sat on a faded orange couch, their faces reflecting television images in brain-numbing patterns of rerun dramas and canned comedies. The man sat with his beefy arms spread wide and his dirty monogram work shirt open to the navel. His eyes drooped from exhaustion as he obliviously stretched his legs and shifted his bare feet across the small coffee table, nearly tipping over his half-finished bottle of beer. The small blonde woman sitting next to him in a floral nightgown jumped with a start to save the beer. She gave him a sour look before locking her glazed eyes back on the flickering images and carefully snuggling closer to him. The small creature swiveled its head to assess the situation, ever vigilant to preserve its prime order for absolute self. It sniffed the air before placing a stringy hand on the outside of the trailer to feel for vibrations and energies. It glanced once more at the ensconced couple and slowly lowered itself back to the ground, moving back around to the shadows of the refrigerator. After a final check of the surrounding area, it let out a soft trill, perfectly mimicking the sound of a desert canyon wren. Mesquite rustled and swayed as 4 other black oily forms burst from cover and glided gracefully over the rocky ground to join their scout. The creatures congregated to form a tight cluster of eyes and limbs, softly trilling and making eye contact with one another in a strange, ancient synchronicity. Then, as one, they ceased all sound and movement, as if catatonic, with their eyes closed and their faces pointed straight at the ground. Night sounds drifted around them for a few seconds more as a kind of shimmering tension formed around the cluster of bodies. Ripples of dark static rolled off the group, dissipating quietly into the night. Suddenly, all 10 eyes blinked open, and the creatures burst into action, separating with smooth purpose to melt with the shadows at different corners of the trailer. One creature found the plumbing access and pressed a lithe hand to the underflooring around the pipes. A rippling dark static pulsed over the wood, turning the wood blacker and blacker until the flooring oozed like tar and dripped slowly to the ground. The tar-like substance completely fell in just a few seconds, leaving a small entry hole that the creature immediately entered. The other creatures worked similarly at different points on the trailer, all slithering through the gaps like snakes prowling for rats. The creatures crept silently through the trailer to the edge of the blinking glow of the television. The young couple remained in an oblivious stupor born of long hard days and little money. In a sudden flurry, 2 creatures converged on the woman and 3 converged on the man. The creatures grabbed the woman deftly, throwing her off the couch before she could even blink. One creature pulled a black parcel seemingly out of thin air that, in one quick flick, opened into a large black sack made of a silky material. The other creature pressed one shiny palm to the girl's mouth, leaving behind a black gooey material that filled her mouth and blocked her first screams. As she began a wide-eyed struggle, the 2 creatures pulled the bag over her head and down the length of her body, zippering her inside the black cocoon. The man was much quicker to react. He roared to action with a look of horror and anger as the 3 creatures assaulted him. He grabbed one slimy little arm and pulled with a grunt of aggression, intent on throwing the attacker into the wall. Yet, the tiny arm was like a movable steel. The creature's small stature belayed great strength and unnatural leverage, rendering the man's efforts a complete waste. In response, the creature lashed out with its forearm and smacked the man in the chest, earning a sickening crack from the man's broken ribs and a seed of pure terror in the man's widening eyes. "What the hell?" yelled the man, just before the 3 creatures wrestled him down to the floor. The creatures quickly and efficiently gagged the man with the black ooze and shoved him into a zippered black bag. The creatures gathered around the 2 wriggling bags, poking and chirping at the struggles of the helpless humans. The scout chirped once loudly and impatiently, gesturing for the other creatures to pair up and shoulder the squirming prisoners. The scout led its burdened brethren to the back door and carefully slithered out to survey the night. The surroundings were still calm and motionless in the bright moonlight. Only the occasional sounds of the desert and the faint country music broke the silence. The scout opened the door wide and gestured for the group to follow it out into the night. The group quickly moved through the mesquite line and into the desert surroundings, careful to keep their packages from bumping into rocks and cacti. The creatures moved swiftly across the rough terrain, navigating the foothills and ravines into the nearby mountains with great agility and tireless purpose. The group only slowed as they approached the ridge of a plateau clustered heavily with grayish-brown frames of swaying big-toothed maple. The scout burst ahead and disappeared while the rest of the party stood silently with burdens that had long since gone quiet. The scout returned several minutes later, chirping excitedly to goad the party through the maples to a rough, naturally cut cave entrance hidden deep within the copse. Directly in front of the cave, 5 other black oily creatures trilled and milled around 2 other long black bags. The scout directed its brethren to set their 2 bags down and join the other creatures. All 10 creatures then melded together into a cluster of undulating and swaying, a grotesque synchronized dance of chaotic limbs moving in conflict to the naturally gentle sway of the trees. As one, the creatures faced skyward and trilled loudly into the night, a frightening cry of evil joy that drowned out the renewed strangled cries coming from the wriggling bags. A growling rumble filled the moonlit rocky mountainside in the canyon below the dancing creatures. A hail of boulders and pebbles followed the rumble as they clattered and echoed among the sheer canyon's steep slopes and clinging copses of gray oak. Jackrabbits and mule deer bounded through the honey mesquite while mockingbirds took flight to escape the disturbance. Clouds of dust floated up into the gentle breeze and lazily deposited a new layer of grit over the rocky terrain. The seismic activity was over quickly, and the quiet of the bright desert night returned. A new fissure lay open to the night sky at the bottom of the canyon. Motes of dust rose and swirled within the fissure, reflecting the bright moonlight in a dance of tiny winks and shimmers. The moonlight pierced downward into the fissure as dust fell and settled. The moonlight pressed deeper and deeper, searching and probing around the cracks and crevices to conquer the darker depths. At last, many hundreds of feet down, the moonlight reached the bottom and burst into a small chamber. At the center of the chamber, directly under the crevice, lay a grisly pile of human remains, a macabre heap of limbs, torsos, and heads in varying stages of decay. The moonlight stabbed through the tangle to one eyelid buried deep within the heap. The skin around the eyelid was pale in the moonlight and seemed unmarred by time, quite unlike the surrounding decomposition. The eyelid moved as the eye underneath stirred and struggled to escape. Then, in a moment of triumph, the eyelash flickered, and the lid receded, and the pupil stared straight up into the moonlight, drawn to the side of the surface world and freedom. Thanks for listening to the podcast of Perditions, Brink, the Prologue. I hope you enjoyed it. Please head over to Amazon.com if you'd like to buy a printed copy of the book. I'm R.A. Harrington. Thanks and good day.